Along the margins of the Amazon's slow rivers and floodplain lakes, water often appears deceptively peaceful. The surface lies smooth beneath a canopy of tangled branches and broad leaves, reflecting fragments of sky and forest in muted green tones. Insects skate lightly across the film of the water without disturbing it much more than a ripple. Fallen leaves drift slowly along invisible currents. To a human observer, this calm surface suggests safety, an absence of urgency in a place that otherwise seems full of motion and noise. Yet this stillness is not emptiness. It is a kind of acoustic quiet, a moment when the water becomes a sensitive surface capable of revealing the smallest disturbance. For animals that depend on detecting movement rather than producing it, calm water becomes an advantage. Predators that hunt through vibration and surface disturbance benefit enormously when the surrounding environment remains quiet. In the Amazon basin, few animals embody this strategy more effectively than caimans. These crocodilian reptiles inhabit rivers, oxbow lakes, flooded forests, and marshes across much of South America, and their presence often goes unnoticed precisely because they move so little. A caiman can remain almost perfectly still for long periods, its body submerged beneath the water while only the eyes and nostrils break the surface. In that posture, it becomes less an active hunter than a listening instrument, waiting for signals carried through the water. The anatomy of a caiman reveals how thoroughly evolution has shaped it for this role. Along the skin of the jaws and face lie specialized sensory structures known as integumentary sensory organs. These tiny dome-shaped receptors detect minute changes in pressure and vibration within the surrounding water. Even the faint ripples created by an insect landing nearby can register through this system. For prey animals, such sensitivity means that movement does not need to be large to become noticeable. A fish flicking its tail, a frog jumping from a branch, or a mammal stepping into shallow water, each generates pressure waves that spread outward across the surface and through the water column. In calm conditions, those waves travel farther and remain clearer than they would in turbulent water. When wind ripples the surface, or when multiple animals move simultaneously, the resulting patterns overlap and blend into a complex background of signals. But when the river grows still, a single disturbance becomes distinct. The splash from a struggling fish or the sudden displacement of water caused by a heavy step spreads outward like concentric circles, carrying information about size, speed, and direction. To a predator waiting beneath the surface, such patterns resemble a broadcast signal announcing the presence of something alive and vulnerable. Caimans do not need to patrol constantly to find food. Their hunting strategy relies on patience and efficient interpretation of these signals. A caiman drifting near the edge of a riverbank may remain motionless for hours while birds call overhead and insects buzz across the water. Its metabolism allows it to conserve energy during these long periods of stillness. Reptiles in general operate with lower metabolic demands than mammals, and crocodilians have refined this efficiency to an extreme degree. When inactive, a caiman's heart rate slows dramatically, and its body remains almost suspended within the water, supported by subtle adjustments of buoyancy. This stillness creates the illusion that nothing is happening. Yet, beneath the calm surface, the predator is constantly processing the physical language of the river. Each ripple carries information. A fish swimming normally produces rhythmic waves with predictable spacing. A turtle surfacing to breathe creates a brief disturbance, followed by slow settling. Even falling fruit generates a pattern that differs from the movement of an animal. Over time, the caiman's sensory system learns to distinguish between these signals, responding primarily to patterns associated with struggling prey. The Amazon basin offers countless opportunities for such encounters. Many animals rely on rivers and lakes as pathways through the forest. Capybaras graze along the banks and enter the water to escape predators. Deer cross channels during seasonal migrations. Birds dive to capture fish near the surface. Monkeys occasionally fall from branches while traveling above flooded forest. Each interaction produces ripples that travel outward across the water's surface. Among these signals, splashing carries particular significance. A splash is rarely produced by a calm animal. Instead, it usually indicates sudden movement, imbalance, or distress. A fish thrashing near the surface creates rapid, irregular disturbances that contrast sharply with the smooth oscillations of normal swimming. A struggling bird beating its wings against the water produces bursts of pressure waves in quick succession. Such signals reveal weakness, and weakness is precisely what an ambush predator seeks. When the water around a caiman remains quiet, these signals become especially conspicuous. Imagine a still river at dusk, when wind fades and most animals settle into cautious patterns of activity. The surface becomes smooth enough to reflect the fading sky. In such conditions, a single splash spreads across the water like a sudden echo in a silent hall. The ripples travel outward in expanding circles, carrying the message of disturbance across distances far greater than the original movement might suggest. For a caiman positioned within that radius, the splash functions almost like a gunshot in an otherwise quiet room. The predator does not need to see the source directly. The pattern itself reveals enough information to prompt investigation. By orienting its head toward the origin of the disturbance and gliding forward with minimal movement, the caiman approaches the signal without producing significant additional ripples of its own. Its body remains low in the water, limbs tucked close to reduce drag, tail providing slow propulsion. The ecological efficiency of this strategy becomes clearer when considering the energetic cost of hunting. Pursuit predators such as dolphins or large fish expend significant energy chasing prey through the water. Ambushed predators like caimans reduce that cost by allowing prey to reveal themselves first. Instead of scanning visually across a wide area, the caiman waits until vibration patterns identify a likely opportunity nearby. In flooded forest environments, this approach becomes even more effective. During the rainy season, vast areas of Amazonian forest become submerged, creating a labyrinth of trunks, vines, and branches rising from the water. Fish and amphibians move through these submerged corridors, while mammals navigate partially flooded ground above them. The water surface in such places is often sheltered from wind by dense vegetation. Calm conditions dominate, and disturbances travel easily through the narrow channels between trees. Within this quiet network, the caiman's patience pays off repeatedly. A monkey dropping fruit from a branch may attract fish that gather beneath the falling debris. When those fish thrash near the surface to feed, their movements generate splashes that travel through the flooded forest like acoustic signals. A caiman lurking nearby can follow the disturbances until it reaches the source. Similarly, mammals crossing shallow water often create rhythmic splashes that reveal their path long before they come into view. The sensory world of crocodilians also includes acute vision above and below the waterline. Their eyes contain a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum, which enhances low-light sensitivity and produces the distinctive red or orange glow seen when light strikes their eyes at night. Combined with vertical pupils capable of adjusting to different light levels, this adaptation allows caimans to hunt effectively during twilight and darkness. Yet even with strong vision, the animal rarely relies solely on sight. The ripples and vibrations reaching its sensory organs often provide the first hint that something is nearby. This interplay between stillness and disturbance creates a subtle paradox in the river environment. Humans tend to interpret calm water as safe water, assuming that danger would be accompanied by noise or visible activity. In reality, the opposite can be true. When the river is quiet, any unusual movement becomes easier for predators to detect. The stillness amplifies signals rather than concealing them. A person entering calm water may initially move cautiously, creating only gentle ripples. But uncertainty or loss of footing can quickly escalate those movements into splashing. Muddy riverbanks often conceal sudden drops or slippery surfaces, and even a brief stumble can generate the irregular disturbances that attract attention. In that moment, the individual becomes the only significant signal in an otherwise quiet environment. From the perspective of a caiman, such a disturbance deserves investigation. The predator glides silently toward the source, guided by pressure waves traveling across the water. If the splashing continues, the signal becomes stronger and more chaotic, reinforcing the impression that the prey is struggling. Even if the animal producing the disturbance is large, the caiman may approach closely enough to assess the situation before deciding whether to strike. The outcome of such encounters varies widely depending on species and context. Smaller caiman species often focus primarily on fish and amphibians, while larger individuals, including the formidable black caiman, are capable of subduing mammals and birds that venture too close to the water's edge. Regardless of size, however, the initial stages of detection often follow the same principle. Calm water makes unusual movement easier to notice. The river itself acts as a transmission medium for these signals. Every ripple carries information across the surface, translating physical movement into patterns that predators interpret. The quiet surface of a floodplain lake becomes a canvas upon which disturbances are written and read by animals that depend on them. In this way, the calmness of the Amazon's waters conceals an intricate system of sensory exchange. Beneath the reflective surface, caimans drift almost invisibly, their bodies aligned with currents, their senses tuned to the faintest vibration. They do not need constant motion to survive. Instead, they wait for the river to speak. When the water remains undisturbed, the silence favors patience. But when something breaks that silence, a sudden splash, a frantic ripple, an irregular surge of waves, the signal travels quickly across the calm surface. To a predator listening through the water, it announces an opportunity. The most deceptive aspect of this system is how ordinary the river appears from above. Smooth water suggests tranquility, yet it also magnifies the importance of any disturbance. In that quiet environment, even a small splash becomes a message carried outward in widening circles. For animals adapted to read those circles, the river is never truly silent. It is constantly broadcasting information, waiting for someone to interpret it. And when the calm surface is broken by a sudden movement, the signal travels far enough for even the most patient hunter to notice. The Amazon rainforest often announces its vitality through sound long before anything visible appears. Even in dense understory where sunlight filters down in narrow green shafts, the forest carries an almost continuous acoustic texture. Insects vibrate through the air in layered frequencies, birds exchange territorial calls across hidden perches, and frogs contribute their rhythmic pulses from leaf litter, shallow pools, and bromeliad reservoirs suspended high in the canopy. These voices create more than background noise. They form a living barometer of environmental conditions, a chorus that rises and falls depending on temperature, humidity, pressure, and the countless biological interactions unfolding within the forest. Among the most sensitive contributors to this acoustic landscape are poison dart frogs. These small amphibians, belonging primarily to the family Dendrobatidae, inhabit the humid microhabitats of Central and South American rainforests. Their brilliant colors, electric blues, blazing yellows, emerald greens, serve as warning signals to predators that their skin contains potent alkaloid toxins derived from their diet of ants, mites, and other arthropods. Yet, despite their chemical defenses and striking appearance, poison dart frogs remain delicate animals physiologically tied to the precise conditions of their environment. Their skin functions not only as protection, but also as a critical interface with the atmosphere, allowing the exchange of moisture and gases directly with the surrounding air. This intimate relationship with humidity means that poison dart frogs are among the first animals to react when microclimate conditions shift. The forest floor may appear stable to human observers, but within the thin boundary layer of air hugging the leaf litter, subtle changes constantly occur. Humidity rises and falls as clouds gather or disperse above the canopy. Barometric pressure fluctuates before storms approach from distant parts of the basin. Temperature gradients shift when wind moves through gaps in the forest roof or when sunlight briefly breaks through the leaves. For small amphibians whose bodies depend on moisture balance, these shifts carry immediate consequences. Their skin must remain hydrated to function properly, and even slight reductions in humidity can increase the risk of desiccation. As a result, many species adjust their activity patterns based on atmospheric signals long before those changes become noticeable to larger animals. One of the most visible behavioral responses is the sudden cessation of calling. Frog calls serve multiple ecological purposes. Primarily, they function as mating signals, allowing males to advertise their presence and attract females during breeding periods. Each species produces a distinctive call pattern shaped by the anatomy of its vocal sacs and the resonant qualities of its environment. In the Amazon, these calls blend into an intricate acoustic tapestry where hundreds of species may vocalize simultaneously from different layers of the forest. Yet, calling is energetically costly and exposes the frog to predators capable of locating the sound source. Snakes, birds, and even certain insects have evolved the ability to track amphibian calls with remarkable precision. For this reason, frogs call most actively when environmental conditions favor survival and reproduction. High humidity reduces the risk of dehydration, while stable pressure often indicates calm weather conditions that support breeding activity. When the atmosphere begins to change, perhaps as a storm front approaches or humidity drops slightly, the balance shifts. The energetic investment of calling becomes less worthwhile and the risks increase. Many frogs respond by falling silent almost simultaneously. To an observer familiar with the usual soundscape of the rainforest, the effect can be striking. The rhythmic pulses that previously filled the air vanish, leaving an unusual stillness where the chorus once existed. This silence does not necessarily indicate danger from predators or human presence. Instead, it often reflects a broader environmental transition occurring at a scale too subtle for immediate perception. The forest's amphibian population, acting collectively through thousands of tiny bodies sensitive to atmospheric chemistry, responds to these microclimate cues almost like a distributed sensor network. The ecological implications of such a shift extend beyond the frogs themselves. When amphibians stop calling, the acoustic environment of the forest changes dramatically. Sounds that were previously masked by the constant background chorus become easier to detect. Predators that rely on hearing may suddenly perceive movements they would have ignored before. Likewise, animals that depend on acoustic camouflage lose part of the protective noise that concealed their activity. At the same time, the atmospheric conditions triggering the silence often alter the behavior of scent and chemical signals moving through the forest. Air density, humidity, and temperature gradients influence how odor molecules travel and disperse. In humid, stable air, scents can linger longer and drift more slowly through the understory. When pressure shifts occur, subtle convection currents may redistribute these chemical trails in unexpected directions. For predators and insects that rely on scent to locate food, these changes reshape the informational landscape of the forest. A jaguar following the faint odor of prey may find the trail carrying farther than usual. Mosquitoes searching for carbon dioxide plumes may encounter signals lingering close to the ground rather than dispersing quickly into the canopy. Ants and other invertebrates navigating through pheromone trails may experience changes in how those chemical markers spread across surfaces. In this sense, the silence of frogs signals more than a pause in amphibian communication. It marks a brief interval when the forest's sensory networks recalibrate. Sound becomes less dominant, while chemical and atmospheric cues grow more influential. The ecosystem continues to function, but the rules governing detection and concealment shift subtly. For humans moving through the rainforest, interpreting this silence can be challenging. Our senses evolved primarily for environments where vision dominates perception. When the forest grows quiet, we may interpret the absence of sound as safety, assuming that danger would announce itself through obvious noise or movement. Yet the absence of frog calls may simply indicate that the forest is responding to atmospheric conditions invisible to us. These moments can create a psychological effect as well. Silence encourages movement. Without the distraction of constant noise, people often become more aware of their own presence within the environment. Footsteps seem louder against the muted background. Breathing becomes noticeable. The instinctive reaction is often to move more quickly, as if leaving the quiet area will restore the familiar soundscape. But haste in the rainforest introduces its own risks. The forest floor is rarely uniform or predictable. Thick layers of decomposing leaves conceal roots, slippery clay, and hidden depressions formed by animal tracks or fallen branches. Moving quickly through such terrain increases the likelihood of missteps. A single slip may produce the very disturbance the silence had previously avoided. A sudden crash through foliage, a splash into shallow water, or the sharp crack of a branch snapping under weight. Ironically, the quiet forest that seemed empty becomes a stage where such disturbances stand out dramatically. The absence of frog calls means that other animals, birds, mammals, reptiles, may also be temporarily reducing their activity or vocalizations. In that subdued environment, an abrupt noise becomes the most conspicuous signal in the landscape. Ecologically, this transformation highlights the complexity of rainforest communication networks. Animals interpret their surroundings not only through direct interactions, but also through the collective behavior of other species. When frogs call vigorously, their noise masks subtle signals produced by many organisms. When they fall silent, the forest's acoustic field becomes more transparent. Scientists studying amphibian ecology often emphasize how frogs function as indicators of environmental health. Because their skin is highly permeable and their life cycles depend on water quality and atmospheric stability, amphibians respond quickly to changes in pollution, climate, and habitat conditions. Entire populations may decline when ecosystems deteriorate, making frogs valuable biological monitors. Yet their sensitivity also illustrates how finely tuned rainforest organisms are to the physical properties of their environment. Microclimate conditions, humidity, temperature, air pressure, can shift dramatically across small distances within the forest. A sunlit clearing may dry quickly, while a shaded valley retains moisture long after rainfall ends. Frogs adjust their activity to these gradients continuously, responding to cues that larger animals barely notice. During those brief periods when their calls cease, the forest undergoes a quiet reorganization. The absence of sound does not represent emptiness, but rather a change in which sensory channels dominate ecological interactions. Chemical signals drift differently through humid air. Vibrations carry farther across still ground. Movements once hidden by the background chorus become audible. In this shifting sensory landscape, interpretation becomes crucial. The silence of frogs might indicate approaching rain, a drop in humidity, or simply a temporary atmospheric fluctuation moving through the canopy. For animals adapted to read these signals, the change offers information about what behaviors are safest or most effective under the new conditions. Humans entering this environment rarely possess the same interpretive framework. We hear silence and search for immediate explanations, often assuming predators or unseen threats. In reality, the forest may simply be adjusting to an atmospheric change unfolding above the canopy. The true danger arises when silence is misunderstood. Moving quickly through unfamiliar terrain in response to the quiet can generate the very disturbances that predators detect most easily. A slip in wet leaf litter, a sudden splash in shallow water, or the snap of a branch underfoot becomes an isolated signal traveling through an otherwise subdued ecosystem. The forest that moments earlier seemed empty suddenly has something clear to interpret. In the absence of frog calls and insect choruses, that disturbance carries farther and stands out more sharply against the background of subdued activity. Thus, the silence of poison dart frogs serves as a reminder that ecosystems communicate through more than the obvious signals humans notice first. Amphibians responding to atmospheric shifts may be revealing subtle environmental changes unfolding across the forest. Their quietness is not merely absence, but information, a biological indicator that the microclimate has shifted and that the sensory balance of the ecosystem has momentarily changed. In the rainforest, understanding these signals requires patience and observation. The absence of sound can be as meaningful as the presence of noise. When the frogs stop calling, the forest has not gone empty. It has simply changed the language through which its inhabitants perceive the world. The forest does not have to roar to feel alive. In the Amazon, life often reveals itself through layers of subtle signals, vibrations through leaf litter, shifting humidity on skin, faint wing beats dissolving into the background of dripping water and rustling canopy. But sometimes the jungle falls quiet in a way that feels unnatural, as if an invisible switch has muted the countless small voices that normally fill the air. The frogs pause their rhythmic pulses, Cicadas soften their electrical buzz, and birds retreat into stillness. To a human observer, standing beneath the green vault of the canopy, the silence feels ominous, almost theatrical, as though something large and predatory has entered the system. Yet the forest does not always fall silent because of teeth or claws. Sometimes the stillness simply changes the rules of detection, and in those altered conditions, the smallest hunters become the most relentless. When the air grows heavy and still, every breath becomes visible in a way we cannot see, but other organisms can detect with astonishing precision. Humans experience respiration as a quiet, unconscious rhythm, air drawn in, carbon dioxide released. In the complex sensory world of the rainforest, however, that exhalation is not subtle at all. It forms a plume, an expanding ribbon of carbon dioxide, heat, moisture, and volatile compounds that spreads outward from the body like smoke from an unseen flare. To many insects, especially mosquitoes, that plume is not merely detectable. It is a beacon. Mosquitoes navigate their world through chemical landscapes that are as structured and meaningful to them as mountains and rivers are to us. Their antennae and maxillary palps are equipped with highly sensitive receptors capable of detecting minute changes in carbon dioxide concentration in the air. For a mosquito flying through the understory, the background level of CO2 produced by soil microbes, decomposing vegetation, and plant respiration forms a baseline, an invisible atmosphere of life quietly breathing. But when a mammal exhales, the concentration spikes sharply. That gradient spreads outward in twisting threads shaped by air currents, temperature layers, and obstacles like tree trunks and leaves. To the mosquito, it resembles a trail. Follow the increasing concentration, adjust flight toward the strongest signal, and eventually the source appears. In the humid stillness of a rainforest clearing, these trails behave differently than they do in open landscapes. The Amazon is a layered environment where air moves slowly and unpredictably. Dense foliage dampens wind, while moisture thickens the atmosphere and reduces turbulent mixing. When barometric pressure shifts before a storm, or when the canopy traps humid air close to the ground, scent plumes and respiratory gases can linger instead of dispersing quickly. The result is an invisible cloud around any breathing animal, one that expands gradually but does not vanish as quickly as it would in drier, windier conditions. For mosquitoes, this transforms the quiet jungle into a map of signals. Each animal exhaling beneath the canopy becomes a glowing point in a chemical network. Capybaras resting along riverbanks emit broad plumes that drift across the water's edge. Monkeys in the canopy release thinner trails that rise and twist through branches. Even reptiles contribute faint signatures through body heat and metabolic gases. But humans are particularly conspicuous. Our large lungs release frequent bursts of carbon dioxide, and our exposed skin radiates heat and sweat compounds that add additional layers of information to the plume. Carbon dioxide alone does not complete the picture. It merely activates the search behavior. When a mosquito senses a rising CO2 gradient, it enters a mode biologists sometimes describe as host-seeking. The insect's flight pattern shifts from random wandering to directed movement upwind toward the source of the signal. As it approaches, additional sensory systems begin to contribute. Thermal receptors detect warm surfaces that contrast against the cooler background of leaves and bark. Chemoreceptors on the antennae recognize compounds released in human sweat, including lactic acid, ammonia, and various fatty acids produced by skin bacteria. Vision also begins to play a role. dark shapes and moving silhouettes help refine the final approach. In the silent jungle, where larger animals have paused their activity and the air moves slowly through the vegetation, these signals travel farther than usual. The absence of strong wind allows CO2 plumes to stretch outward in elongated filaments, and subtle convection currents caused by body heat pull the plume downward and outward through the understory. What feels like stillness to a human observer is, in reality, a slow-moving river of chemical information. Mosquitoes drifting through this environment encounter those currents like scouts intercepting a signal flare. The irony of this situation is that the human reaction to mosquitoes often intensifies the problem. A single bite rarely goes unnoticed. The sharp prick of the proboscis triggers a reflexive response. A hand slaps the skin, muscles tense, breathing quickens. In that moment, the body produces exactly what the insects are designed to detect. Faster breathing releases larger pulses of carbon dioxide. Stress and movement raise body temperature slightly, strengthening the thermal signature. Sweat glands activate, releasing additional compounds that mosquitoes recognize as confirmation of a suitable host. Each swat or sudden movement disturbs the air and spreads the plume further. Mosquitoes themselves are remarkably specialized predators despite their small size. Only females feed on blood, and they do so not for direct nutrition, but to acquire the proteins required to develop eggs. When a female mosquito lands on skin, she uses a bundle of microscopic mouthparts collectively called the proboscis. Within this structure are multiple slender needles. Some cut through the skin, while others probe for capillaries beneath the surface. Saliva containing anticoagulants and mild anesthetics is injected to keep the blood flowing freely, allowing the insect to feed undetected for several seconds. The itching and swelling that follow are not caused by the bite itself, but by the human immune system reacting to those salivary proteins. From an ecological perspective, mosquitoes occupy a surprisingly central role in tropical ecosystems. Their larvae develop in water, often in small pools formed by fallen leaves, tree hollows, or temporary puddles created by rain. These larvae filter microscopic organic particles and algae, recycling nutrients that might otherwise remain locked in stagnant water. They also serve as food for fish, amphibians, and aquatic insects. In the adult stage, mosquitoes become prey for birds, bats, dragonflies, and countless other insect predators. The rainforest food web is threaded with these tiny bodies, each one carrying energy upward through the system. Yet the same evolutionary strategies that make mosquitoes effective components of the ecosystem also make them formidable parasites. Their sensory systems have been refined through millions of years of coevolution with vertebrate hosts. Studies using high-speed cameras and wind tunnels reveal how precisely they navigate chemical gradients. A mosquito encountering a CO2 plume does not simply fly straight toward it. Instead, it zigzags through the air, repeatedly crossing the plume boundary to confirm its direction. Each adjustment refines the trajectory, guiding the insect closer to the source. In the Amazon's humid twilight, when the forest's larger sounds fade and the air thickens under the canopy, these behaviors become more pronounced. Without the chaotic turbulence produced by wind or the masking noise of active wildlife, chemical signals remain intact longer. Mosquitoes emerging from breeding pools rise into the still air and begin scanning for hosts. A faint plume drifting from a breathing animal becomes a highway leading directly to warm skin. For a human moving quietly through such conditions, the experience can feel paradoxical. The jungle appears calm and motionless, yet the number of insects converging on the body increases rapidly. Each mosquito that finds the plume reinforces the perception of being singled out by the environment itself. In reality, the insects are responding to signals that every mammal emits constantly. What changes in the silent forest is not the presence of those signals, but their persistence and clarity. Understanding this dynamic reveals a deeper truth about life in tropical ecosystems. Silence does not necessarily mean safety or emptiness. Instead, it often marks a shift in which sensory channels dominate the landscape. When sound fades, chemistry takes over. Invisible gradients of carbon dioxide, moisture, and scent become the primary language through which organisms locate food, mates, and threats. In that chemical landscape, the simple act of breathing becomes a broadcast signal. Each exhalation spreads outward through the humid air, curling around vines and leaves, drifting along the forest floor, and rising slowly through shafts of filtered sunlight. To humans, it is nothing more than respiration. To mosquitoes navigating the quiet jungle, it is a bright trail pointing directly to the source of blood and warmth. And so the stillness of the rainforest does not hide you. It reveals you. In the absence of louder signals, your breath becomes the most powerful beacon in the ecosystem, a soft, invisible flare burning steadily in the heavy air, guiding the smallest hunters of the forest straight to you. On the forest floor of the Amazon, movement often happens at scales that escape immediate notice. Leaves shift slightly under the weight of unseen insects. Thin roots push slowly through the soil, and columns of ants navigate the labyrinth beneath fallen branches with a quiet efficiency that rarely disturbs the wider ecosystem. At first glance, the ground appears stable and calm, a mosaic of decomposing leaves and dark earth layered by years of biological activity. Yet, beneath that still surface lies one of the most dynamic forces in the rainforest, the army ant swarm, a living wave that moves not as individuals, but as a collective organism composed of hundreds of thousands of coordinated bodies. Army ants, particularly species within the genus Echelon, represent one of the most remarkable examples of social organization in the insect world. Unlike many ant species that build permanent nests and send out foraging workers in organized trails, army ants operate as nomadic hunters. Their colony does not revolve around a fixed structure of soil or wood, but instead forms temporary living shelters known as bivouacs, created from the interlocked bodies of the ants themselves. Workers grip one another with their legs and mandibles, forming walls, ceilings, and chambers that house the queen and brood. When conditions shift or food resources diminish, the entire colony dismantles this living structure and begins moving again, transforming the forest floor into a shifting landscape of organized predation. The swarm itself functions like a coordinated hunting front. Thousands of worker ants spread outward across the leaf litter in a fan-shaped formation, probing every crevice, branch, and patch of soil for prey. Small insects, spiders, worms, and even vertebrates such as lizards or nestling birds may fall victim to the advancing wave. Each ant is individually small, but the sheer density of the swarm creates a force capable of overwhelming animals many times their size. Their mandibles are designed for cutting and gripping, and when a prey item is encountered, dozens of ants may latch on simultaneously, immobilizing it before carrying fragments back toward the moving colony. Despite their formidable reputation, army ants do not actively seek out large animals as prey. Their hunting strategy focuses on creatures small enough to be subdued by collective action. Yet their behavior intersects with larger organisms in ways that reveal the intricate relationships shaping rainforest ecology. Many animals have evolved to follow army ant swarms, taking advantage of the chaos produced by their advance. Certain bird species, known as ant followers, shadow the swarm closely, feeding on insects that flee the ants but escape the ants' grasp. Lizards and frogs may also exploit these opportunities, darting in to capture prey flushed from hiding places. This phenomenon illustrates how army ants function as ecosystem engineers. Their movement reorganizes the forest floor, flushing hidden organisms into the open and temporarily redistributing energy through the food web. A swarm moving through leaf litter can transform a quiet patch of forest into a concentrated feeding ground for dozens of opportunistic predators. Yet the same movement that creates opportunity also produces a subtle trap within the dynamics of stillness and motion. Army ants rely heavily on chemical communication through pheromones, laying invisible trails that guide thousands of individuals along coordinated routes. These trails reinforce themselves as more ants follow them, strengthening the path through repeated chemical marking. Once established, a swarm can move with astonishing efficiency across the forest floor, navigating obstacles while maintaining a cohesive hunting front. In typical rainforest conditions, many animals detect the approach of a swarm long before it arrives. The rustling of leaf litter as thousands of insects move simultaneously creates faint vibrations. Small mammals and reptiles often sense this disturbance and shift position to avoid direct contact. Birds calling overhead may signal the presence of the swarm to other animals, creating a subtle network of cues that ripple through the ecosystem. However, environmental changes can alter how these signals propagate. When atmospheric pressure shifts before rainfall, or when humidity rises and wind drops under the canopy, the forest floor can become unusually still. Insects reduce flight activity, birds pause their movements, and even small mammals may remain motionless while conditions stabilize. The leaf litter that normally rustles with constant micro-movements becomes quiet. In this subdued environment, the advance of an army ant swarm changes character. Without competing vibrations or disturbances, the movement of the ants becomes more organized and direct. Their pheromone trails remain intact longer when wind and temperature fluctuations are minimal, allowing the swarm to progress with fewer interruptions. The hunting front spreads smoothly across the ground, encountering fewer obstacles created by fleeing animals. For creatures that remain stationary during these periods, this quiet efficiency introduces an unexpected vulnerability. Army ants do not discriminate between prey and obstacle until contact occurs. Their sensory world is dominated by chemical signals and tactile cues. Warm surfaces, textured objects, and organic material encountered along their path are investigated immediately. When a swarm encounters something stationary, whether a fallen branch, a sleeping animal, or even a human foot planted in the leaf litter, the ants begin exploring it in the same way they would any unfamiliar structure. This behavior explains why animals caught unaware by a passing swarm often respond dramatically once contact begins. The ants climb rapidly over surfaces using their hooked claws, probing for crevices or exposed tissue. A single ant bite is minor, but the sensation multiplies quickly when dozens latch onto skin simultaneously. The defensive response of many animals is immediate and explosive, shaking limbs, jumping away from the ground, or sprinting from the area. For humans moving through the rainforest, The initial encounter with an army ant swarm can be startling precisely because it begins quietly. The ants themselves produce little noise individually, and their movement often blends with the subtle rustle of the forest floor. Someone standing still may not notice the advancing front until the first ants begin climbing onto boots or clothing. At that moment, instinctive reactions take over. The sudden sensation of multiple bites can trigger panic, leading to rapid movement away from the swarm. In most cases, the ants detach quickly once the person leaves their path, as the colony remains focused on continuing its coordinated advance. Yet, panic can create its own hazards in the dense environment of the rainforest. Running through thick leaf litter and tangled roots carries the risk of missteps. The forest floor is rarely even. Hidden depressions, slick clay patches, and fallen branches create unpredictable footing. A hurried escape from biting ants may lead to slips or falls, turning a minor inconvenience into a more serious situation. An injured animal or person produces far louder signals than the ants themselves ever would, crashing through vegetation, splashing into water, or striking branches while trying to regain balance. From an ecological perspective, the swarm's role remains consistent regardless of these encounters. Army ants are not malicious hunters targeting large animals, but rather components of a system designed to process the immense diversity of small life within the rainforest. By constantly moving and consuming insects and other invertebrates, they help regulate populations that might otherwise expand unchecked. Their swarms also provide feeding opportunities for species adapted to exploit the disturbances they create. One of the most remarkable aspects of army ant ecology lies in their reproductive cycle. Unlike many ants that produce multiple queens capable of founding new colonies independently, army ant colonies revolve around a single queen whose body becomes extraordinarily enlarged during reproductive phases. She produces vast numbers of eggs that sustain the colony's workforce. When new queens emerge, the colony divides through a process known as colony fission, with groups of workers escorting a queen to establish a new nomadic swarm. This reproductive strategy reinforces the colony's mobile lifestyle. Because army ants do not rely on permanent nests, they can exploit temporary food resources across wide areas of forest. Their swarms move in phases, periods of intense hunting followed by stationary intervals when the colony forms its bivouac to protect developing larvae. These cycles synchronize the colony's activity with environmental conditions and prey availability. The dynamic interplay between movement and stillness shapes every aspect of army ant life. When the swarm advances, it becomes a force of motion sweeping through the leaf litter. When the colony rests, thousands of bodies interlock to form a living structure that remains remarkably stable despite lacking rigid materials. This duality reflects the broader rhythm of the rainforest itself, where bursts of activity alternate with moments of calm. During those calm periods, when humidity thickens the air and the forest floor falls unusually quiet, the swarm's advance can appear almost surgical in its precision. With fewer animals scattering ahead of them, the ants progress through their environment with minimal disruption. Their pheromone-guided paths remain clear, and the hunting front moves steadily across the ground. For any warm-blooded creature standing still within that path, the encounter is not personal. The ants do not recognize the difference between prey, obstacle, or curiosity until contact occurs. Their investigation is automatic, driven by the same instincts that guide them to capture insects and larvae hidden beneath the leaf litter. The lesson hidden within this behavior reveals something fundamental about the rainforest ecosystem. Many dangers within this environment do not arise from intentional aggression, but from intersecting paths between organisms pursuing their own survival strategies. Army ants advance because that is how their colonies feed and reproduce. Other animals avoid them because evolution has taught them to recognize the swarm's signals early. When those signals are muted by environmental stillness, the chances of unexpected contact increase. The forest floor opens briefly, not because the ants become more aggressive, but because the usual cues that warn other animals of their approach become less noticeable. In that moment, the quiet jungle can transform a small swarm of insects into an overwhelming sensory experience for any creature caught unaware. The ants climb quickly, the bites accumulate, and instinct demands movement away from the source. Panic introduces noise, motion, and imbalance into the environment, signals far more dramatic than the swarm itself. The army ants continue forward regardless, their coordinated wave dissolving obstacles and reorganizing the life beneath the forest canopy. For them, the rainforest is not a place of isolated encounters, but a continuous landscape of opportunity, navigated through chemistry, touch, and collective action. And within that living tide, stillness becomes the one condition most likely to invite investigation. Not because the swarm seeks it deliberately, but because warmth and motionless surfaces stand out against the quiet rhythm of the forest floor, inviting the ants to climb and explore before continuing on their relentless march.